Welcome back. We are now beginning Module 3, Unit 3, Government Institutions, otherwise referred to as the branches of government. This is the legislative, executive, and judicial branch, along with an examination of the American bureaucracy and how they have developed into an institutional branch themselves over time. We've already been through 2 units, believe it or not. Unit 1 focused on the government foundations that we have within our American system, such as the government systems and relationships that exist, the U.S. Constitution, federalism, civil liberties and rights. Unit 2 looked at political inputs like our opinions, our voting, media, political parties, interest groups. Now we look at the institutions themselves. How do the institutions operate within this governmental system with all of these other factors considered? And so we begin by looking at the legislative branch, mainly Congress. Okay? Congress is a unique entity, and we're going to break that down. Congress is made up of 2 entities, as I'm sure we are all aware by this point, the U.S. House of Representatives and the Senate. This is what we refer to as a bicameral system. Bi meaning 2. Under the Articles of Confederation, early on in our country's history, as you would have read, we only had 1 branch of government, the legislature, which was unicameral, and it was very dysfunctional. When we drafted the Constitution, we wanted to improve upon that, and this bicameral system is what was developed because of 2 views. The first being the Virginia Plan, which was the plan most modeled by larger colonies that had become states like New York, Pennsylvania, and so on. They believed that population in Congress should be based off population. That your variable representatives would be doled out based on the overall population of your state and region. The other was the New Jersey Plan, which was developed and thought out by the smaller states within the Union, like New Jersey, Connecticut, Rhode Island, and so on, that believed it should be an equal proportion method, meaning 2, 4, what have you, 1 for every state. What ended up becoming developed was what we call the Connecticut Compromise, or the Great Compromise, where we took elements of both and created a bicameral system of our legislature. So the House of Representatives follows the Virginia Plan, being based on population, and the Senate follows the New Jersey Plan, being doled out in equal proportionment. We utilize both to create what is known as Congress. So, the Senate and House have representation models that are slightly different, as we just described. Every state selects 2 senators that serve 6-year terms, making up 100 in total. Okay? They serve 6-year terms because the House of Representatives serves in sets of 2, meaning that every time we elect new House members, a third of the Senate would be up for re-election as well. In total, we have 435 House members and 100 senators for a total of 535 congressmen and women. Okay? Every congressional district in the United States gets 1 congressperson. That distribution is determined by redistricting, which is completed by the United States Census. So these are all the multitude of local districts that make up each state and the culmination of what will become the Congress. We categorically place these into congressional districts and then dole out the representation based off of that allotment. We use what is called the equal proportions method, where every 10 years we use the United States Census to collect population data on all the citizens within the United States. This is required by the Constitution and has been done since our country's founding. Now, when we were first a country in 1791, we had 65 representatives, each representing around roughly 30,000 citizens. As time has gone on, of course, that number will grow, and by the turn of the 20th century in 1910, we had 435. We knew that if we continued to allow it to grow in that current process, by today, we would have roughly 1,500 members in Congress. Now, because of the complicated, burdensome operations of Congress, we knew that that would not be realistic. So by 1920, Because of urbanization and the census calculating that many, many people were moving to urban cities and changing the entire dynamic of the apportionment of the U.S. Congress, by 1929 we will put a permanent cap on how many people can sit in the House at 435. Which means rather than adding a new congressperson for every new district that develops, we simply redraw them as the population grows. We call that apportionment or redistricting. That means one representative will always be given to the same district of equal size, roughly 750 to 800,000 citizens. So rather than joining in with new districts as the country grows, we simply redraw and reallocate districts that already exist based on how population shifts within the country. That means some states will have a lot, like California, who has 55, or Florida, which has almost 30. And then there are several states who simply only have one, like Alaska, Delaware, Montana, the Dakotas, Vermont, and Wyoming. This is completed, as I mentioned, with the equal proportions method done through the census. This is what the census looks like. And we reapportion based off of the generalized regions of the country, and then we make a determination of what states will gain representation and which will lose representation. Now, because of all this collective representation that exists within Congress, it can sort of explain why Congress, despite having such a low approval rating, can stay there and continue to serve. This is called collective representation. Even though we know Congress's approval rating is at an all-time low, somehow we have this innate ability to separate our elected representative from the rest of the pack. So individuals who may be pissed at Congress in California, let's say Nancy Pelosi's district in San Francisco, they may think the government's going in the wholehearted wrong direction and that their approval rating is incredibly low, but hers will be unaffected. It's because for some unique reason, the American public does not associate their elected representative with the overall flow of Congress. That's just one issue with this consolidated system that we've developed. Another is how we handle apportionment. There are several issues with capping the size of the House of Representatives, as we discussed earlier. One is that one representative now represents roughly 1 million people, which is very difficult for your voice to be individually heard by your representative. Washington, D.C. holds no representation at all, despite the fact that it has millions of citizens living there, right? We also have a variety of territories and districts outside of our country, like Puerto Rico, Guam, the Mariana Islands, the Virgin Islands, that have no representation or say in Congress whatsoever. We've also created a very ornate pattern of letting politicians stay there for an extremely long period of time, leading to majority-minority districts, and we continue to participate in gerrymandering, as we've already discussed before. Gerrymandering draws the lines of a district in a certain way to enfranchise or disenfranchise a particular group, political party, ideology, what have you. Florida utilized one in the last governor's election and continues to utilize one as we move forward, as it was upheld by the state Supreme Court. We move into congressional powers. Congress has very unique powers afforded to it. We put these in 3 broad categories: enumerated, implied, and inherent. Enumerated powers are explicitly stated in the Constitution, word for word, as the ones you see listed below from Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution. The others are known as implied powers, which are not explicitly written, but they are implied with the way it was written through our interpretation of the Constitution. And then there are inherent powers, which are there because we have Congress. Like, we're going to have to do certain things, spend certain money, create certain rules just to have Congress exist, whether we like it or not. So enumerated, implied, and inherent. As we look at the development of Congress, it's important to note that the House of Representatives and the Senate are very different in their makeup. The House of Representatives is very hierarchical, as you can see pictured on the right, being led by the Speaker of the House, the most powerful person in Congress, third in line to the ascension of the presidency. They are elected by the House itself. So a member of the House will be promoted to that level. Right now it is Speaker Mike Johnson of Louisiana. Underneath the Speaker, we have the House majority and minority leaders. That would be from the Republican or Democrat Party. Below them, they have the majority and minority whip, which is the individual who gets the party in line to vote for certain policies or procedures, and the remaining 435 representatives below them. Now, in the Senate, it's slightly different. The Senate is only 100 people, so it is chaired by the Vice President of the United States, who is the only dual member of government who operates in two branches. The Vice President is only there to break a tie of 50-50. Our current Vice President has broken more ties than any Vice President in history. When the Vice President isn't there, it is chaired by the President pro tempore, which is the most senior member of the Senate. And then we have a majority-minority leader, whip, and the remaining senators. This is the Speaker of the House pictured on the right, Mike Johnson of Louisiana, Republican, and the Senate Majority Leader, Chuck Schumer, a Democrat from New York, pictured on the left. We will continue our discussion of the legislative branch in the next video.